Hi, everybody. I'm Alan.
And I'm Mark.
Welcome to our Live from Pawnee, a Parks and Rec fan rewatch podcast. We're happy to meet you and have you here with us. We're going to do our best to kind of walk you through whether you've seen the show or not and break down each episode for you.
That's right. We're going to walk you through this whether you want us to or not. So just prepare for that.
They have no choice in the matter.
Nope. Sorry. There's people outside your door. You actually can't turn the dial. I assume they can turn a dial on the podcast, right?
Yeah, I think it works that way.
Okay, cool. Hey, Alan, do we have a clip for the cold opening?
Yeah, you know what, Mark? I think because of the type of episode this is and how important it is to the series in general, this particular cold open introduces us to our protagonist, Leslie.
Yes.
And I think there's no better way to meet her and kind of get a sense of what the show's like than to play the clip for you. So let's do that right now, and then we'll be right back.
All right.
Hello. Hi. My name is Leslie Knope, and I work for the Parks and Recreation Department. Can I ask you a few questions? Would you say that you are enjoying yourself and having fun, having a moderate amount of fun and somewhat enjoying yourself, or having no fun and no enjoyment? I'm gonna put a lot of fun.
Miss Knope! There's a drunk stuck in the slide.
Sir, this is a children's slide. You're not allowed to sleep in here. You know, when I first tell people that I work in the government, they say, oh, the government stinks. The lines are too long at the DMV. But now things have changed. People need our help. And it feels good to be needed. Could you put your arms to your side? And that might help you slide down a little easier? Do you want to come this way? Okay, we're going to need you to get out. Get out of the slide. Okay? Here we go.
Please go away.
Okay, wake up. Here we go, out of the slide. You know, government isn't just a boys' club anymore. Women are everywhere. It's a great time to be a woman in politics. Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin, me, Nancy Pelosi. We did it! You know, I like to tell people, you know, get on board and buckle up because my ride's gonna be a big one. And if you get motion sickness, you know, put your head between your knees because Leslie Knope's stopping for no one.
Okay, we're back. So, Mark, what'd you think?
Oh, I love this opening. I mean, it's classic Leslie Knope. If you've ever watched the series and come to know her character, this is classic. She's happy, she's optimistic, she's ridiculously unflappable and a little weird, but in a good way. What do you think?
I thought the same thing. I think this particular episode, and we'll get into this in a little bit, you know, this first season's a little rough. A lot of TV shows start off being a little different than maybe where they end up being by the time you've fallen in love with them. And I think Parks and Rec particularly suffers that. But this cold open in general is very much, I think, true to the spirit of Leslie and her heart and how much she loves her job. And I think that is one of the saving graces of this episode in particular, but season one in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, like you said, any series that's trying to establish itself, it requires some time to build, you know, dare I say, the universe. And that's true regardless of whether it's a sitcom or whether you're talking about fantasy or whatever. That's true for this too. But I think that's going to detract from it a little bit here in season one. But you have to love Leslie's spirit. And I know that sounds corny, but I agree with you. I think that's something that drives her as a character forward and it drives the show forward.
That's a great synopsis of the cold open. And at this point in our normal episode, I think we would actually give out the synopsis of the overall episode, correct?
That is correct, Alan. And as chance would have it, I have the synopsis right here in front of me. This is the official synopsis. At the Parks and Rec office, Parks Director Ron Swanson pushes staffer Tom Haverford to join Leslie in hosting a community forum that night. Leslie stays positive during the forum despite the small hostile turnout, as she calls it, carrying at her loudly instead of yelling. At the event, a local nurse, we meet Ann Perkins, brings up the giant pit behind her house, and by the end of the meeting, Leslie is strangely inspired, and she pinky promises, which I love, Ann and the rest of the crowd that she will turn the pit into a park. Leslie seeks the advice of city planner Mark Brendanowitz, who quickly urges Leslie to drop it. Leslie, Tom, and cynical college intern April Ludgate go to Ann's house to discuss the pit, where we meet Ann's boyfriend, musician, and man-child, Andy Dwyer. As they inspect the pit, Leslie falls in, which Andy thinks is awesome, and April and Tom capture it on camera. Back at the office, Leslie asks Ron for permission to form an exploratory committee, and even though she pesters him for the rest of the day, he only gives in when Mark Brendanowitz cashes in a favor, never named, Ron owes him. Tom later lets Leslie know that she got her committee, and they celebrate with champagne, getting Leslie and Ann way drunk in the process. Very funny. Leslie and Ann start to bond on the experience, and despite her skepticism about politics, Ann pledges to do whatever it takes to help get the pit filled in, quote unquote, even if it takes as long as 2 months. Ta-da.
Excellent summary. There's so much about that really just hits the nail on the head. I love the kind of precursor that it ends with that, you know, this might take as long as a whole 2 months, which if you've watched the series, you know that's kind of a pretty funny statement. All right, Mark. Well, that was an excellent synopsis. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. And then when we get back from the break, we'll break down this episode. We'll talk about some of the standout moments, maybe a few of our character journeys, and start to build our understanding of each of the main characters of the show, talk about a deleted scene or two. And then at the end of the episode, we'll wrap up by giving this episode a score. How's that sound?
Sounds like a plan, Alan.
All right, let's do it. We'll be right back, everybody.
We'll be back.
Hello, this is Ron Swanson. If you are like me, then you appreciate handcrafted quality goods. I am sure there are some of you who are fine with particle board furniture and other such mass-produced items. While this is fine for a college student whose primary subsistence is ramen noodles and Pabst Blue Ribbon, I prefer the beauty of natural wood and a good bottle of old Scotch whiskey. To find such items, including handmade wooden whiskey coasters, I highly recommend that you go to the internets using the screen of your choice and visit offermanwoodshop.com. Tell them Ron sent you. Thank you. That is all.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Thanks for taking that break with us, and welcome back, Mark.
Welcome back, Alan.
I think what we talked about we would do next is, because this episode in particular is simply named The Pilot, and I did take a look at the script, and in the original script, it's actually just called Pilot. So we decided that we didn't like that.
We can do better than that. Yeah,
we can do a lot better than that.
Heck
so.
Yeah.
We've each selected our own individual AKA, also known as, and we're going to give this episode and really every episode after it at least 2 additional names.
Right. And there's going to be a 1-800 number that you can call to vote. Well, no, we didn't set that up. Okay, we're just going to give our AKAs then.
We were going to do that, but we did not have budget.
Stupid budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe if we can get an additional sponsor, an additional to Sweetums, then we can afford to do that.
You'd think Sweetums would be willing to shell out the bucks, but yes, I agree with you. Anyway, so do you want to go first?
I can go first. My AKA for this particular episode, I had a couple of them, but I think the one I've selected for today is AKA, oh, nope, you didn't. You know, this is clearly a play on Leslie Knope. Funny or not, it's my title.
Oh, it is funny or not. I think that, no, that's a good one, actually. I mean, isn't that a play that they make on her name throughout the series? The fact that she's like the epitome of ridiculous positivity, and yet her name is Nope.
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah, it hits really hard during the later seasons when we see her politicking and running for various offices. But you're exactly right, and it's a great play on words at a minimum. What was your AKA, Mark?
Well, yours is really good, Alan, but I think the people
Yours
are
is
going to
better.
vote. Yeah, but I don't want to say that, so I'll let you say that. The people are going to vote for this one. No, I really like when Anne, as we know, Anne becomes great friends with Leslie as the series goes on, and so I really like the first meeting of Anne and Leslie, and when their friendship starts to, blossom, and her initial synopsis, I guess, or summary of what she thinks of Leslie. She simply says, she's kind of doofy but sweet. So that's my AKA. She's doofy but sweet.
Mark, have you seen the deleted scenes?
I have not. Are there deleted scenes?
There are quite a few deleted scenes. We might even play one of them here in a minute, but I jumped right to them. It may be a little bit out of order, but I got excited because you talked about that great line of Ann's in your much better than mine, AKA.
Well, I mean, if you think so, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm going to vote for you too.
I knew it.
Because you can't vote for yourself, right? Didn't Bobby Newport decide that? I don't know. Anyway.
Still up for debate. Yeah, go ahead. So for those of you playing at home, if you have the deleted scenes for this, go watch this right now so we can see what Alan's talking about.
Okay, well, now that we've talked about our AKAs, what's up next, Mark? What are we going to talk about next?
I think we should talk about the standout moments of the episode, the things that we remember. I'll give you an example. I love that Leslie has a ridiculous, optimistic, but scary intensity when she tells Anne, looking at her straight in the eye, oh, this isn't a promise. This is a pinky promise. And coming from anybody else, it would be borderline creepy, but you're like, you really believe that, don't you? I love that. She pinky promises everybody.
She is so impassioned to really be helpful, and she sees that that's the role of government clearly. And I think what happens next is even better, and that's when everyone starts applauding, and she has this giant smile on her face because she just loves, being applauded. And of course, who doesn't? But
sure.
Leslie in particular really feeds off of that vibe for sure.
What was one of your favorite moments?
There were several. There's so many great quotables in here. I think one thing that was in the cold open that we didn't talk about that I just loved, I think is worth mentioning, is the drunk in the slide.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, there's so much there to talk about. I think one of the things I found interesting, even just at a kind of a factual level, was the fact that they had to look really hard for that slide. This is in the commentary between Greg Daniels, the creator, and Mike Schur, the co-creator, and both writers of this episode. They talk about how most of those slides in the Los Angeles area have been torn down because they're actually so tall that they're considered dangerous.
Oh, wow.
But they found this one in this park there in California, and it was exactly what Greg had gone through the trouble of sketching out in advance. And they just wanted a slide that was narrow enough and tall enough that they could stuff a drunk in it. So
see, I thought you were going to say that they were looking for a tornado slide. It's like specifically.
I don't know. I haven't seen the sketch, but they definitely wanted one they could stuff a drunk in.
Well, that's true. I'll tell you one more moment for me is it just very simply Leslie falling into the pit. I am a true sucker for really well done physical comedy, and
Yep.
it's just absurd. It's dare I say doofy. She falls in the same darn pit that she's been talking about all this time, and I just laughed. Oh my gosh, such a great scene.
I think it's terrific too that the next scene when they cut and they're both on the couch, Leslie and Andy, and Andy's just thrilled that she has also fallen in the pit. I don't know if he's just happy to have someone as stupid as he is, or just to have some company. But
I think she had a great, just very, very quick exchange with Ann. She says something like, oh gosh, my boss is going to take me seriously, now that my clavicle's broken. And Ann's like, no, seriously, you're fine. And then she says in a real, hushed voice, no, seriously, my clavicle's broken. And which I don't know if you could hear me say that at home, but oh my gosh, just such a funny moment.
Yeah, there's some other great moments in this too. I think, in particular, also as a result of Leslie falling in the pit, we get back to the main office, and Tom and April, who are on site, rather than be supportive of Leslie and making sure she's okay, they've clearly photo documented the episode, and they've got the classic upskirt photo of Leslie falling over backwards, which Mark finds distasteful, and
Oh, of course.
gives him a slight redeeming moment for what's ahead for that particular character. But
Yeah.
that there's a lot of great stuff from the pitfall. Not a pratfall, which, Chris, Pratt falling in the pit is technically a pratfall and a pitfall.
Wow. Well,
See what I did there?
How long did you have that in the hopper? That's really good.
Yeah, language is funny.
Yeah, nice. Well, what do you think? Should we go to character development and building?
I think we could. Let's start with I don't know who you want to start with. You want to start with Ron?
See, I'll tell you what. I think that it's tricky because being the first episode, they're starting from scratch. So you could say all of them have had character building, but really, I mean, we don't know a lot about them, so it's going to be pretty quick. I think we've talked about Leslie more than enough to kind of get an idea as to how she is, which is great. She's a great protagonist for the series. You know, Tom Haverford, I viewed him as a lazy, opportunistic horn dog, apathetic, which I guess is accurate, but it's a shame when you don't have any depth of character yet to kind of counterbalance that.
Yeah.
So like for now, I'm just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah, Tom's not likable in the early series, and I think we, like a lot of characters, we grow to love him definitely as the show goes on, and there's Tom's true self doesn't really come out for quite a bit yet.
I would actually say the same thing to a lesser extent about Ron Swanson. I mean, he grew to easily be one of my favorite characters of the series, but I would say in a very simple sense, because Leslie is the optimistic protagonist of the series, and what we see in this episode is Ron just kind of standing in her way and saying, "No, you can't do stuff." And it wasn't bad, but it still kind of came across like, well, he's clearly the bad guy then, if Leslie is the good guy. At least it did to me. What do you think?
I think Ron's a really interesting character, both in the first episode and throughout the series. I mean, while we definitely get to like him better, and he gets to like his coworkers and really, develops a relationship with most of them, in fact, but especially Leslie over time. At this point, they definitely have a distinct relationship between boss and employee. Ron's not particularly interested in what they're doing, in the government and in the parks department in particular. In fact, he doesn't even believe in government. He talks about that.
Right.
He does everything in his power to dissuade people from coming to see him. One of the scenes early on that was also a standout moment was, Ron demonstrating how he has a sawed-off shotgun that is pointed at the person coming into his desk, asking him for pretty much anything.
Oh,
so
I love that.
That pretty much tells you how he feels about giving service to people and to the community at large.
I would say, I think that's a great point, Alan. I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes as well. I think to round off the a-hole trifecta, as I would consider it, is when we meet Andy Dwyer. And again, how can you not like Chris Pratt? And yet, in this first episode, I feel like he kind of comes across as a little bit of an ass. I mean, he
does.
He mistreats Anne. He's very demanding. He's, lazy, and we like him a lot better later, but for now, and that's unfortunately a large part of how I think we see Anne in this initial episode. Is she's just this she's the poor girlfriend who is obviously very long suffering towards Andy's lazy shenanigans, and it seems like she unfortunately lets herself be taken advantage of. So
yeah, and I think Anne grows a much bigger backbone over time too, and eventually puts her foot down with that, and doesn't keep herself in a position to have kind of have someone take advantage of her like Andy clearly is here. In fact, there's a deleted scene that's, it's not one that I think would be worth playing because it's very visual. And you mentioned your love of physical comedy, but if you have access to the DVDs, I highly recommend you watch it, because there's another scene where Andy's an even bigger jerk, and he just wants a sandwich. Please, I need a sandwich. Ann is having the interview with the documentary crew in our fake mockumentary that is Parks and Rec, and not to be confused with other fake mockumentaries, of course, but he just wants a sandwich. And Ann wants to talk about the pit to the camera crew, and he tries to get up, and she says, can you just hold on a minute? And he isn't willing to hold on. And before you know it, he has flipped over. He's laying on the couch backwards and kind of upside down, and his feet are up in the air, and he's in pain because he's in a double leg cast. And
oh my gosh,
he comes across as a real jerk. So I highly recommend checking out that deleted scene when you get a chance.
That is awesome. I did want to make at least one more mention of another character, and this would be very brief. April Ludgate. I think that she is, and I apologize to our viewing audience. I forget the actress. It's Aubrey Plaza. That's
Aubrey
right.
Plaza.
I think that she is
amazing. Aubrey Plaza.
Oh my gosh. I think that she is understated and brilliant in this first episode, because I think that there are a lot of characters that if you're fans of the show, you'll say, okay, I see a little bit of them in this episode, but they grow into what we eventually know them to be. She keeps it very simple. You see her as just the slightly cynical, slightly almost sneering, God, whatever. I mean, she plays it perfectly, because you get the impression from the very beginning. It's like, yeah, I'm having a great time. God.
She's the quintessential disinterested millennial for sure.
It's the cynical, sarcastic little quips, the looks.
Yeah.
It's not enough to be directly disrespectful, but it's the clear equivalent to a giant set of eyeballs rolling in long frustration.
And quite literally at times too. I mean, she does more with her eyes than most people do with 7 or lines worth of dialogue. So
I agree.
Hats off to April and to Aubrey. There were a lot of great quotes in this episode too. Where the rubber of government meets the road of real people. I thought that's a great line.
Oh my gosh. And then not only that, but then she's like, Tom, write that down. And he just holds up a blank piece of paper. Like, yeah, this is what I do when she tells me to write something down. They're just scribbles. And then she says, and then she called him on it and said, hey, Tom, read that back. He's like, committees cover the town with blood. And then she's kind of stunned by that. And then she kind of looks over her shoulder and says, it sounded better when I said it. It was still good though. Just ridiculous. So I have a question for you, maybe to kind of end this section. What did you think of, what was your first impression of Brendanowitz?
I think one of my alternate takes for the AKA was that Mark Brendanowitz is a douchebag. So
why do you say that?
Actually, I think that's in a future episode, but I think in this particular episode, Mark's not a bad guy. I think we're going to see something very interesting happen pretty quickly, where he and Tom are almost going to exchange roles. Tom's going to be a little bit less of a D-bag, and Mark is going to be a little bit more of one, and that's going to persist for a while. So and it's interesting to me too, and I've read about this. Obviously Parks and Rec, created by Greg Daniels and Mike Schur, the people who brought us The American Office. This is their show as well. I think, Greg played a really big role in both, but more so in The Office. And then, and this particular, and Mike Schur is kind of stepping up, and he's the co-creator of this. He wrote this episode. He had a lot more to do with this show kind of on his own outside of Greg's purview. So, it's really interesting to me that I think they stole a lot from The Office, because, this is in some ways, there's even internet rumors and conjecture that Ann is a crossover character, that she is the same character that she was in The Office, but she's in witness protection in Pawnee, Indiana.
Oh my gosh.
And is therefore a true tie to The Office.
That's brilliant.
Beyond the creators and writers. So that's great. Go out on the internet, search, Parks and Rec rumors, conspiracy theories. I'm sure you'll find it. But Brendanowitz, I think, was actually supposed to be the Jim Halpert of this. And I cannot get over that, because he is not a Jim Halpert in this episode or any in the future.
I agree with you. I think that was maybe what they envisioned. I mean, if you feel like Ron is kind of eventually he becomes the lovable antagonist, I guess. Tom Haverford is just a douche. So
A lovable douche.
I mean, sure, but I think you're right. I think they intended Brendanowitz to be the Halpert of Parks and Rec, and you know, I just feel like he's not Halpert material. I mean,
No,
who is? He's not a bad guy. He's like somewhat decent. He just, to me, he comes across as somewhat bland. Now, this may be, you know, I guess damning with faint praise or whatever. I think that he still did a decent job in this episode and a lot of them, and yet when compared to a lot of the other characters, I feel like he kind of comes across as bland.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree. And I think all the characters we'll definitely talk about more. I think maybe throughout season 1, because it is the season it is, and there's a little less to love here than we'll see in season 2 and beyond. You know, maybe we'll deep dive on a couple of these characters and go into more, because I've seen him in other shows and he's actually a terrific actor, and he was a good actor here too, but I just always struggled with liking his character. And you know, and there's some real comedic geniuses in this show. He plays a great straight man generally, you know, where I think Jim Halpert, you know, and John Krasinski are really funny, you know. I'm not sure he's all that funny. I think he's a better straight actor. And, you know, and yet you've got Donna here making her first appearance and Jerry Gergich making their first appearances. Both are just ridiculously funny, and they're practically non-existent here in the pilot. So
that's a good point. And, you know, I think that you're right, though. You can have characters that are better, you know, straight men or straight women if you are surrounded with a lot of comedic talent. And I think he obviously was, but I think that I think that they kind of missed the target a little bit on what they wanted him to eventually become. And I think we, you know, obviously by the end of season 2, they kind of realized that and say, you know, we're gonna make a change up in the cast.
Yep, totally. Okay, well, is this a good point for us to take another break?
I think so.
All right, well, let's do that. And when we come back, we'll get back into it.
All right.
All right, and we're back.
Hey.
Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you. I mean, welcome back, Alan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think normally, you know, I think we're going to try each week to come and talk about some of the things we've certainly already talked about. But, you know, when we can, we're going to feature a deleted scene or two. We're still working on the technology, and, you know, we put in the order with the Amazons of the world, and, you know, $10,000 or $12,000 from now, we'll be able to play those deleted scenes back to our listeners. What do you think?
That would be fantastic. You know, if Sweetums would just, you know, up the money that they get from their big gulp drinks, I think we'd have it. But
especially the child-sized drink.
Oh, that you can actually fit a child in. Absolutely.
It is child-sized.
Yes. It really is. Yeah. What do you think?
Really
I love the idea of the deleted scenes. Since we're going to forego that for now, do you want to just jump to scoring?
Yeah. So what do you think? Are we talking a 10-point scale, a 5-point scale? Are we going to make up apples? You know, little Sebastians? How are we rating this thing?
Here is my thought. First of all, you know, I wanted to rate this myself against the rest of the Parks and Rec episodes, because I don't know about you, Alan, but I know I've seen a lot of really crappy sitcoms, and I know it sounds cliche to say this and very fanboy to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Even the bad Parks and Rec episodes are not bad. I mean, they're in the grand continuum of sitcoms. I still think they're pretty good, worth watching. They pale in comparison to themselves because it's such a good show. But I think
I agree. I think I'd much rather watch a bad Parks and Rec than I would a good 2.5 Men.
Right. You and I can have that debate later. But
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think you agree with me. You know, a horrible, in air quotes, horrible episode of Parks and Rec, if we want to say, oh, this is a 1, it might actually score a 5 in the grand universe of sitcoms, because it's that good of a show.
That's
so
fair.
after all this fanboying and everything, I've given this a lot of thought. And, we talked before about how it takes time to establish a world, and that time that you use to establish it usually detracts a little bit from the guts of the show. And in that case, it means for a sitcom often lowering the funny bar. And this, I think this was an okay episode, but this was kind of a low point for me, and it's not all their fault. You have to introduce people and plots and the location. It is what it is. In terms of exposition and establishing their universe and their world, so to speak, I thought they did a good job of introducing the characters. In terms of overall, belly laughing enjoyment, meh. It was good enough to make me want to stick around for the rest of the series. I distinctly remember that when I first saw it. But I am going to score this. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 10. All right. And
Yep.
let's if we do that, I'm going to give this a 2. And so it's pretty low. I get that. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the season 1 episodes are going to rank fairly low. Honestly, I'm giving this a 2 mainly because I'm trying to leave room for a potentially worse episode in the future. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I'm going to stick with a 2. What do you think?
Okay. I think in general, I agree with you. If we're going to do solid points, no 0.5s here. I think I too would also choose a 2. There are moments in this episode itself where I might have gone as high as a 3. Probably not a 4, except maybe a couple really of the funnier moments. But overall, I think it flattens out, comes down to about a 2. Like you said, we're going to see much higher scores. This show in general is a much higher score, but we're very early. We're building characters. We're introducing themes, and in any show trying to do that, you're at a bit of a deficit until you really have created that universe and created something that people can relate to and start to love. So we'll get there. We'll get there with this show for sure, and that's why we all kept watching.
I would agree with that. Hearing you describe it just now, you made me change my mind a little bit, because you asked the good question, like, are we doing straight points? Are we allowed to do 0.5s? And I think we can do whatever we want. We could do Little Sebastians if we want to. So you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say there were a few really funny moments, if for no other reason than Leslie falling in the pit.
Yeah,
I'm gonna up it by half a point.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
So
give this
2.5.
officially a 2.5. Yeah.
All right.
What's your official
2.5
score?
Little Sebastians it is. So, all right. Well, I think it's fair to say we can probably almost only go up at this point, and I think we will. So, all right. Well, we'll come back next week. I think we're going to try and do one of these episodes each week, and Next week's episode is canvassing. So, I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait.
It's going to be great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
All right. See you, everyone.
Take care.
Live from Pawnee is a copyrighted production of the creators. Copyright 2020. All rights reserved. Original music was created and performed by Aaron Emerson of Emerson Studios. Clips are used under fair use doctrine for the purpose of commentary and parody. Please see our website at livefrompawnee.com for more details or to contact us.